Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dakota Hufford, and I'm the Communications and Program Coordinator over here at CRBC. I'm joined by Amy Barton, our Program and Stewardship Manager, and Jessica Berger from That Portland Life Real Estate Agency. Thank you so much for joining us today in our final webinar in our series designed to help you be a better steward for your land here in the Clackamas Basin. Before we get going, I know that many of us are joining from Oregon and Washington, and I'd like to just take a moment to recognize that we are gathered on the unceded land of many Native peoples. I ask you to join me in acknowledging the many communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. We thank those who came before us for their stewardship of these lands and waters, and those who continue to steward them now and into the future. We're also grateful to have restoration and cultural art projects with the tribes as well. Just a quick overview of the schedule. We'll do a real brief CRBC intro. We will talk about symmetry and balance, color palettes and bloom time. We'll talk about, well, Jessica will talk about wild yet intentional yards and managing some pesky HOA restrictions, some specific habitat design ideas and budget-friendly enhancement ideas, and a little bit about the backyard habitat certification, and then we'll have some Q&A.
Oh, to unmute. All right, everybody. Welcome. I'm Amy Barton, and I'm going to share a little bit about the Clackamas River Basin Council. Our mission is to foster partnerships for clean water, to improve fish and wildlife habitat, and enhance the quality of life for those who live, work, and recreate within the Clackamas River Basin. We are a 501c3 nonprofit watershed council, and we've been at it for 20 years. We're invested in restoring the Clackamas River and all of its tributaries. We do that through in-stream restoration projects, stewardship and volunteer events, and streamside planting projects and wildfire recovery. And now that you've heard a little bit about us, I'm excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Jessica Berger with That Portland Life. She has been a realtor in the Portland area since 2010. And she is bringing her passion for homes, and she's got a background in architecture and design to help landowners create stunning, sustainable curb appeal. She studied at the University of Oregon School of Architecture, and that really gave her a keen eye for design that not only looks great, but also adds lasting value. And she's here to share her insights in making smart, beautiful, and eco-friendly landscaping choices. I fully trust Jessica. She's a friend of mine from college, and she helped me buy my home here in Oregon.
Thanks so much for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here talking to you about one of my favorite topics. I absolutely love curb appeal. And I think that it's great to talk about something that can be both beautiful and sustainable. So I thought we would start with a real world example about why it matters. So here we have two houses that were on the market at the same time. They're both in about the same neighborhood. One of them, as you can see, sold below list price, was on the market for a really long time. One sold very quickly and for over list price. And what's the really big difference? It's curb appeal. So the house on the left just has some grass and one bush that really makes the house feel off balance. And the home on the right has been landscaped with a bunch of plants that interact well with each other and with the home. Curb appeal really is the first impression that your home makes. It's the way that your house looks from the street, how welcoming that it feels, and how well maintained everything appears. Curb appeal doesn't just matter when you're selling your house, but it matters for the neighborhood appeal, for long-term property value, and how much you enjoy coming home every single day. So homes that have strong curb appeal obviously are going to sell faster, but it also signals that your home is well cared for, and it adds character to the neighborhood, and it is more sustainable for the environment if you have plants that don't need to be constantly watered and can help care for the wildlife in the area. But what helps create curb appeal? I figure we can talk about a couple key principles. The next slide. There's three really big principles of curb appeal that we can talk about. The first is balance and symmetry. Your yard doesn't have to be symmetrical to have symmetry. But if you have really tall bushes on one side, then you want to have either something tall or very heavy on the other side. Or if your house is very tall, then you want to have some tall plants, but you want everything to kind of play together and feel like it has some harmony. The second principle is to make sure that you have lots of layering and depth. So you want to have tall things and medium things and low to the ground plants. You also want to have a variety of textures. So you want to have some like sticky plants, you want to have some flowering plants, and you want to have some like soft bushy plants. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you have things that are going to look nice year round in every single season. And Amy and Dakota are going to be talking about lots of different plants and flowers that look good all year round shortly. And now that you know some key principles, we're going to talk about the two main types of yards that we see around the Portland area. Next slide. The first one is what I like to call wild yet intentional. So this one is very naturalistic. It's very, very eco-friendly. It focuses a lot on native plants, on biodiversity, and really minimal water usage. This style really, really utilizes the layering and depth principle. So you want to make sure that you have a lot of variety here. This is a really good one if you want to have something super low maintenance. You could just plant everything at one time. You have to water it a lot at first, obviously, to make sure that it sticks. But once it has been established, it's really, really minimal upkeep. You see this a lot with rain gardens in the Portland area, which are great for the city and great for the environment. This is very good for wildflowers. You can see a lot of natural stone elements in these ones, and it's designed to look really, really lush, but it should still feel intentional, not just like you threw a bunch of plants at your house and let it do its own thing. This is really good for pollinators, obviously, because you have so many plants and you can have so much variety. And like I mentioned, it's very low maintenance. The next slide. If you prefer something that's a little more structured, the second type is kind of modern or manicured. This is where you're going to have your grass, very polished look, and this uses obviously clean lines and much more symmetry. This is much higher maintenance, so you want to try and find plants that are going to be drought resistant. If you want to try and stick with something a little bit lower maintenance, and you should try and find plants that are going to be native as opposed to kind of your typical like boxwoods or pansies or things that you see very often in these manicured yards. Otherwise, you're going to have to use a lot of water to try and keep them pretty, which goes against sustainability. These are good for like raised planters and sculpted hedges, and you do those kinds of things here too. And the next slide. And then lastly, I figured we could talk about HOA restrictions. I know a lot of Clackamas has homeowners associations in it, and they have a lot of rules. So we like to try and get around those rules, and the easiest way to do that is to put things in pots. Many HOAs don't allow you to do permanent plantings in the ground. So if you do container gardens, they can't really get mad at you because you can just pick your pots up and move them. These are great for adding depth, for adding height, for adding color, because you can put as many pots as you want and you can kind of level them. You can do gardens in your containers if you want to have an herb garden or a vegetable garden, or you can just stick with bushes and flowers so that you can have variety in your yard. Plus, it's nice to get a pop of color in there because then you can have colored pots too. And then some HOAs will let you do plantings, so you can check your bylaws, but I still think doing container gardens is the best way to work around this. I think that's my last slide.
Thank you, Jessica. So as we've been hearing from Jessica, your landscaping can obviously change the appeal and the appearance of your home to your neighbors, passersby, even if you're trying to sell your home. But your landscaping can also change the curb appeal of your yard to wildlife as well. So when we say eco-friendly landscaping, what we want to focus on is incorporating native plants. Our wildlife have formed special relationships with native plants, and many need native plants to even complete their life cycle. So we're going to share some. Oh,
Sorry.
you're good. So we are going to be sharing some groupings of plant selections that will be blooming during different seasons to give you that curb appeal all year, support pollinators and other wildlife in every season. And then for our yards to be eco-friendly, we also want to try and reduce our water use, as Jessica was saying, and our reliance on pesticides and herbicides. So we have some ideas on how to do that. And then many of the plants that we're going to share today also help reduce erosion and hold on to and support healthy soils. So next slide. We really wanted to show this graphic to you just to really show how amazing our native plants are, not only above ground, but also below ground. So you can just see, these aren't plants that are native to our region, but you can see how big and long and complex those roots are of native plants compared to our non-native cultivars that were selected for other reasons, like maybe their flower size or shape or color. So our native plants are really going to be really nice for wildlife habitat and for holding on to and keeping those soils healthy.
I will just say at least one of those is a native to here, that 9 bark with those, the longest there. So
yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty. So talk a little bit about maximizing habitat value. When you're planning your garden, your plant choices can make a huge difference. Consider high value habitat plants. And what we mean by that is plants that benefit many different types of insects and wildlife all at once. This graphic here was created by researchers at the Oregon State Extension Office. And you can see that more types of bee species visited the Douglas aster, that was the winner, than the farewell to spring clarkia, California poppy, globegelia, and the rose checker mallow. Obviously, all of these are native to the Willamette Valley, so these are excellent choices for your wildflower meadowscape area. And these, are just general great additions to your garden anywhere to attract pollinators. And a bonus is that they can, bringing the pollinators in can also help pollinate any edible plants you may have. Oh,
there we go. Okay, so using the high value plant selection ideas that Dakota is sharing, and then pairing that with Jessica's curb appeal insights, we have some native plant choices for you that will bloom for each season. So this is a great time to take a screenshot of these if you guys want to remember them for later. We can also post these plants too in the comment section on YouTube as well. But starting off with the red flowering currant, for curb appeal, it has these really large clusters of pink flowers. It's a really important nectar source for hummingbirds, butterflies, and bees. It also has berries later in the season for other types of wildlife to eat. We love the Oregon grape too. The Oregon grape is Oregon's state flower. Painted lady, butterflies, moths, mining bees, other insects will use this for food. And also the berries provide food for other animals like birds and foxes, coyotes, raccoons, all different types of mammals. The common Camas is just a beautiful addition to any garden, especially if you're looking for that kind of like meadowscape sort of look. It's also really good for rain gardens, so highly recommend. It was also an important first food for indigenous people. It has a little edible bulb that you can eat. The large-leaved lupine is a hummingbird and pollinator favorite. It's also drought tolerant too, so reducing your need for a lot of extra water. It fixes nitrogen. And you can use it for erosion control. It's great for meadows, scapes, and rock gardens. We also love yarrow too. It's also very drought resistant, good for rock gardens or soils that aren't great. And it's just a really high value pollinator plant too.
Yeah,
and
and one, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I really like the Oregon grape and the red currant together because they both have such bright flowers. So those are a really, really good pair to have at your house.
One fun fact about lupin is that it was the first plant that was used by Tofurkey, the company here in Oregon, to make plant-based meat alternatives. It is edible as well. Cool. So here's some summer selections. So Oregon Sunshine is an awesome one. It's bright yellow, daisy-like flowers, and it has this really pretty silver green foliage. It's super drought tolerant. It loves a lot of sun, upland sun areas. It's a great host plant for painted lady butterflies, orange sulfur, red admirals, camas, and skippers. All of those are butterflies. And then the seed heads also provide food for birds throughout the fall and winter. Showy milkweed is a super awesome one. It has these soft, large pink clusters. They are vital for monarch butterflies, but many other insects have some really good relationships with them as well. The meadow checker mallow has tall pink blooms and is a host again for painted lady butterflies, but it's beloved by most pollinators. It also will attract a lot of flies. The western which is a good thing. We like flies in the garden. The western columbine has these really striking red and yellow nodding flowers, and they're hummingbird magnets. And then the Douglas aster, as we saw from that graphic, attracts basically everything. It has these masses of purple daisy-like flowers, and it blooms all the way into the late season, late fall. And so bees and pollinators can have something to eat through the season, and goldfinches love to eat the seeds in the fall as well.
And doing a like wildflower meadow instead of a grassy patch can be a really, really nice look for your front yard.
Okay, so getting into fall, only one, excuse me, only one of these plant choices is actually in bloom. But all of these are going to have really great fall color, and they're also going to support wildlife in other ways. So the Pacific 9 bark there on the left does have white summer flowers, but in the fall, it just has that really beautiful red bronze fall foliage. And it also has this like peely bark that's really pretty too, that you can see really well in the wintertime. So a great choice for fall. Our native vine maple is also a wonderful choice. You can see it has those lovely orange leaves, and when they fall, you can just leave them there to mulch on the ground. And it has those little helicopter seeds too that we're used to seeing in the fall that are eaten by lots of different types of mammals and wildlife. And then the goldenrod there in the middle obviously has those beautiful yellow flowers, and it will give a late season food source for bees and butterflies and flies as well. As Dakota mentioned, flies are good. We want flies. And the snowberry is one of, oh.
All right, it has a mind of its own. There we go.
The snowberry is one of my personal favorites. It looks great all year round. You know, it has beautiful pink flowers in the spring and summer, which turn into these white berries in the fall and winter. And they're eaten by lots of wildlife late in the season. And I just think they're really cute, and they are a great garden addition. And then lastly, the evergreen huckleberry. It's a great replacement for boxwoods. If you have boxwoods in your yard, take those out and put in this, because it looks a lot like a boxwood, but it's native and it has flowers in the spring and summer, and then it has these edible berries on it that people can eat too.
And the maple and a huckleberry are really good for your front yard too, because they have a nice variation in height, and they'll have a really nice variation in color, so they add a lot of depth.
Okay, so here are some ideas for keeping your yard kind of popping during the winter. Osoberry, it's one of the first to get its foliage back in very late winter or very early spring, and then it's one of the first things to bloom with pale white flowers. It can tolerate lots of different soil types, and its roots are friends with basically all of the other plants we've mentioned. And it loves to be by like larger trees, some cedars and oak trees if you have some trees too. Salal is one of my favorites. It's compact, lush foliage. It does have pinkish white flowers in the summer, but it stays green all throughout the winter and is great ground cover. It's home for lots of burrowing insects, and in my yard, it houses a whole family of garter snakes. So it's a good habitat one. Coastal manzanita is an evergreen shrub. It has an exfoliating, peeling red bark, and so that has like some fun winter charm and color to it. The Pacific madrone is super stunning and also has an exfoliating reddish bark. It has evergreen leaves, and it has these late winter flowers with these red berries, and it feeds thrushes, robins, and small mammals. Keep in mind, this is a super slow growing tree, so just be patient with her. And then the red osier dogwood is beautiful all year. It does have these bright green leaves in the spring and summer, but when they fall off, and white flowers as well, but when they fall off, they have these really brilliant red sticks, red twigs that pop up, and it leaves this really vibrant pop of color for your yard.
And the red osier dogwood is one of my favorites for the winter because it's so bright red, and it adds a lot of texture to the landscaping.
Okay, so we've thrown a lot of plants at you guys, but if you want to just choose a few plants that will be green all year round and they still have that curb appeal and habitat value, here's some really great choices. The sword fern is drought tolerant once established, and it pairs really nicely with lots of other types of plants, so it looks great. The evergreen huckleberry, we did mention that earlier, but it is great for that, that evergreen, like you don't have to maintain them all that much kind of appeal. The kinnikinnick is one of our favorites. It is also evergreen. It's a trailing low plant that has flowers and berries in the fall, and lots of wildlife eat those berries. It's really great ground cover, highly recommend. And then the Pacific wax myrtle, we also recommend this one. It's a large evergreen shrub with white flowers and berries that really give a high energy snack to wildlife, especially yellow rumped warblers. They seem to really love them. You can also use the leaves as you would a bay leaf for cooking. So it's kind of like our native bay leaf. So highly recommend that. And then the Romer's fescue. It's just that we didn't talk a lot about grasses, but you can put in as many native grasses as you want. It's really great filler to put in various places, and really, really good for erosion control, and it just looks good all year.
And one quick thing about ferns, when they are healthy and they're green, they add a lot to your landscaping. But when they are not, they take so much away. So make sure that they are pruned and watered properly, or if they're just brown and dying all the time, please take them out.
And this is just kind of a last overview of some of the choices that we've mentioned for year-round beauty. If you want to snap a screenshot or take a picture really quick, and we will be sending these resources out as well in a recap, and you can always reach out to us. Yeah, so some curb appeal friendly habitat essentials. Wildlife need these 4 essentials to thrive in your eco-friendly yard: food, water, cover or shelter, and a place to raise their babies. With food, the most important way to offer food is through native plants, which we've just covered extensively. Wildlife will eat the seeds, berries, nuts, foliage, pollen, and nectar of all of the plants mentioned. For water, you can provide a water with a water feature such as a bird bath, fountain, or small pond. You can even make your own water source with things you may just have like lying around, or get crafty. This second image to the right here is a homemade bird bath and toad abodes, which Amy will touch on later. Lots of options. For shelter, you can offer cover and shelter with bird or bat boxes, and bee hotels or bug snugs, which again, Amy will mention later as well. your vegetable or fruit or herb or otherwise garden also provides just fabulous habitat as well. So for this, we want to go ahead and leave the leaves and leave your dead looking stalks at the end of the season when plants are going dormant, because beneficial insects will get in there and make their homes, burrow for this and overwinter in there, and then have enough energy to feed those spring babies. And so for some low maintenance and water efficient ideas, you want to think about definitely choosing drought tolerant native plants, especially as things are changing and our summers are getting hotter. Native plants like the Oregon sunshine, yarrow, blue wild rye, which is a grass, thrive with minimal water and care while supporting our pollinators. You want to cluster high water plants like ferns in shadowed, low-lying areas, and drought-tolerant plants like milkweed or penstemon in sunny, maybe more upland spots to just maximize your efficiency in your yard. And then adding a 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch, either wood chips, barks, or leaves, really helps prevent evaporation of that moisture, especially during the hot seasons. It reduces weeds and overall improves soil health. Leave the leaves. And then I think Jessica has mentioned multiple times too that it really adds, the mulch specifically really adds to the curb appeal and gives it that more manicured look, and is also doing so much work. Swap your lawn out. Replace thirsty grass with a small native meadow using low maintenance wildflowers like Camas, Douglas aster, and Yarrow is a great eco lawn alternative if you want something you can walk on. And it also stays pretty year round. And then opt for a drip irrigation. A drip system delivers water directly to your roots, and you can time it so that you do it during the most efficient times of the day, and it reduces that water waste. And also you can think about maybe collecting rain barrel water for the drier months.
Okay, so we've shared a lot of plants, wildlife enhancement ideas, and it might seem like this could cost a lot of money, but there's definitely ways to do this on a budget. So starting with bird baths or micro ponds, Dakota mentioned you can make those, DIY bird baths with stuff you already have at home. You can also make little tiny ponds. The pond image there on the right is on my back deck, and it has 3 different native plants in it. It also has some non-native floating plants on top. But having something like this can provide a water source for wildlife. You may even attract some bugs to your pond. Okay. Another option is seed spreading. So it's a really great way to cover a lot of ground with not that much money. So those 3 little seed packets from Symbiop were not that expensive, but it's enough to cover 900 square feet of land. So you can really get a lot of bang for your buck with seed packets like that. And then we've talked about mulch so much, but for getting it for free is possible from Chip Drop or a local arborist. You can call up Chip Drop, look them up online, and you can ask them to deliver some to your house, and they will do that for you. And a big load. I've done it before. I know Dakota has too. It's a great way to get some free mulch, and it just looks really nice. You can also make your own wildlife shelters, like the toad abode there is one that I made a few years ago, or making little bug hotels or bug snugs. That's a great way for your kids to get involved if you'd like. They can help you build those, and it just makes nice homes for wildlife, and they look cute too. So you can have these things and it still adds that curb appeal because it looks intentional, and it looks like you're trying, to support wildlife in your yard. Oh, and I don't have a picture of it, but milk jug greenhouses are a great way to overwinter seeds. Wish I had a picture, but you can actually look it up online. You can make a greenhouse out of a milk jug and put seeds in it, and it just kind of like helps those seeds in the springtime. It's really amazing. I highly recommend.
Yeah, cool. So just to kind of touch on something that Jessica had mentioned earlier, if you have a smaller yard space or HOA restrictions, there's still a lot that you can do. Container plantings do require a bit more upkeep with watering throughout the dry months, but they provide excellent habitat and forage for wildlife, and they look super cute. There are 3 kinds of plants that can perform 3 different functions in planters: thrillers, fillers, and spillers. Frillers are the attention grabbers and do best when they can be the tallest in the pot. Frillers add mass and texture to the arrangement. Ground cover species are good for this. and spillers soften the container edges by spilling over the edges and giving a flowing look and adding variety. And so here's just some examples of those 3 types of plants.
I'm sure many of you have heard about the Backyard Habitat Certification Program, but if you haven't applied, I encourage you to do so. It's a great draw for home buyers. It adds value to your home, but they are full of resources for yards of all sizes, including helping with design ideas and maintenance plans. And it's free, and you can also get plant coupons for local nurseries.
This is our wrap up. I just wanted to say, thank you for doing your part. Our watershed, just like many others, is rapidly changing due to these human caused changes and development, with many streams and natural areas being heavily impacted by these changes. By committing to steward your own land and space and helping spread the word to others about eco-friendly landscaping, you can help mitigate these environmental changes on a community level. Here's just a real short recap on some final thoughts on ways you can be a steward to your land in regards to curb appeal. And again, as always, please reach out at any time with questions. So curb appeal does matter to the home value and how quickly you would sell your home if that's something that you're doing. The wild yet intentional style is very popular in our area, which is awesome. I love that. That's my personal yard style. Getting around small space and HOA restrictions, there's still a lot you can do. Think about planters, find out your rules, look up your bylaws, complain if you don't like them. There are budget-friendly options. Chip drop is one of the best resources that I can think of. Get that free mulch. And as you're building it, build it with wildlife in mind and choose those seasonal varieties that will both nourish the environment all year round and look cute all year. And then I have one final thing. If you live in the Clackamas Basin, please come take our pesticide pledge. You'll get a really cute metal yard sign. It'll show all your neighbors that you're committed to a chemical-free yard and keeping our water nice and clean. I'll pop that in the chat in a moment. And then with that, that concludes all of the information we have for you today.